concerns over land reform policies, just one of the issues facing agriculture in South Africa. So what is the future for agriculture? Dawie Maree is the head of marketing and information for agriculture at FNB Business. He joins us now to talk more about this. Very good evening to you, Dawie, and thank you for coming in. In one of the stories that we've been airing on eNCA today, there's quite a lot of talk about policy uncertainty as far as this land expropriation without compensation is concerned. But I'm wondering if we've begun to see the jitters that are said to exist in real terms.
Good evening, Thembekile. Thank you for having me. Yeah, unfortunately, we start seeing that jitters. I think with that list that featured over the weekend, after that there was numerous, publications in the media and so on. We actually saw that actually before the list featured a couple of months ago already, when the Agricultural Business Chamber Index, the AgBus Confidence Index, saw a decline in the confidence, specifically in the investment side in agriculture. So that's one of the unfortunate things of this policy uncertainty within the agricultural sector.
Which part is proving most troubling for investors? Because the ANC, in making it clear that it will push ahead with expropriation of land without compensation, has made it clear that there won't be a wholesale redistribution, if you will, of land that is owned by farmers. So it will be done in a lawful manner. So why are investors and local farmers nervous?
I think the nervousness comes from the fact that there's nothing on paper yet. There's no clear signal of what is going to happen and how it is going to happen. Farmers are willing, and the private sector are willing to assist where they can, but they must know how and when and where and so on. So the devil is in the detail, and as long as that detail is not public, there will definitely be uncertainty. And that's the case in any policy, not only in agriculture.
But as far as that is concerned, is there an appreciation then from the markets and investors that South Africa, given our history, does have to go through some sort of land reform, because what we've done since 1994 has quite clearly not worked, and it needs to be sped up if we are to build a country that is able to move forward and benefit the majority who've been so dispossessed?
No, definitely. And there is also signs of the positives of land reform. Out there, we must just air that more. I think the problem is not in the policy, but in the implementation of that policy, where we had in the past, cases of corruption and misappropriation of funds within certain departments. So if we can sort that out and get the policy implemented as it is, then we can take the sector and definitely the country forward.
I want to go back to the issue of the list that came out this week, this list that was distributed by AfriForum mainly. It was a list purporting to show names of farms that government was apparently going to take and use as part of some experiment for land expropriation without compensation. We then had the Minister for Land, Maite Mashaba, coming up saying, in fact, the department has no knowledge of this list. So how dangerous then, in such a volatile space, is it to have lists that no one is able to verify to be true, and then have a body as influential as AfriForum circulating that, even though there's no independent verification of the information?
No, that's unfortunately that's very dangerous to do that, and I think very irresponsible as well. I had phone calls from farmers that said, but they've actually bought a farm and they're investing in the sector, but that specific farm is now on the list. What must they do now? And I think the only thing that we can say is continue with the sale. There's no official publication yet available, so it doesn't help to go mad and stop any sales at this stage. Now, unfortunately, there was some sales stopped, as I've learned yesterday, in some of the provinces due to that list. And I think that's the unfortunateness of not certainty in the public or in the public domain.
Let's move away then from land reform and talk more broadly about agriculture. How are things in the sector now, given that very bruising drought period that we saw in the Western Cape, the Northern Cape and the Free State, mainly?
I think if we start with the Western Cape, the drought that we still experience there, we had some good rains. Obviously, dam levels are up, which is positive signals going forward. Unfortunately, that actually had an impact on this year's production and next year as well. because it's in the Western Cape, they mainly farm with tree crops and long-term export crops. So we can expect that the horticulture industry, the fruit industry, will be down in the next couple or next year or two. Fortunately, at this stage, the exchange rate is helping them in terms of exports. If we look at the grain industry, we sit with record carryover stocks due to that bumper crop, that record crop that we had last year, which actually is suppressing prices at this stage. Positive side for the consumer because it brings down food inflation, which also helps the livestock, the intensive livestock sectors, feedlots, piggeries, and the poultry industry. So from that side, it's much more positive in the industry than it was a year or two ago.
You mentioned livestock, and one of the stats that's come out recently is that livestock prices are expected to drop later on in this year, as was seen in late 2017. What's behind that?
I think it's market factors. Obviously, farmers restocked their herds and rebuild their herds after the drought period. Now, those animals will now come into market because normally August, September, farmers starts to sell off to the feedlots for the December festive period, and that's normally when we see a decline in the prices. Obviously, from the neighboring countries, Botswana and Namibia, which was in the same situation that we were, they will now exporting again to South Africa, which also suppressed the meat prices going forward. And we must remember it comes from a high base, so the increase will definitely be slower than it was last year.
All right, Dawie Maree, in one short line, what needs to happen now going forward for agriculture in this country to go back to what it used to be?
I think policy certainty first thing. We have to have that to get the industry growing again. If we look at the climate situation, it seems to be much more positive than it was a couple of months ago, especially for the Western Cape and inland. And I think we need to get that investor confidence back into the farming industry. Not only on the farmers, but also from the agribusinesses side. That investor confidence will grow the economy, will grow the agricultural sector.
Okay.
And most of the rural economies depends on the agricultural sector.
Dawie Maree, thank you for coming in. That was Dawie Maree. He is the Head of Marketing and Information for Agriculture at FNB Business.